we move on, because Bill Rammell, when you're not gracing us with your presence on this panel, your day job is as chief exec of is it Contested Histories charity?
No, Parallel Histories, which is an educational charity.
On so-called contested histories?
Yeah. So
what is contested histories, just briefly?
So contested histories are things like Israel-Palestine, Northern Ireland, the British Empire, 20, 30 different topics. We resource schools in the teaching of contested and conflicted history. It's fantastic for developing kids' critical thinking, their oracy skills, their confidence, but it also develops them as civic and political citizens. And we commissioned YouGov to ask some questions on our behalf. And I have to say I was gratified but amazed by the results. 74% of people, against 9% who disagree, believe that children should be debating contested history in the classroom. And I think that's something that should be taken on board by the government in the curriculum review that's upcoming.
So does that mean, for example, I was brought up being taught and learning that, for example, Winston Churchill was a national hero. There's statues of him.
And he is,
and he is, of course. But there is now this narrative recently, especially from the left, that he was some sort of genocidal maniac racist. Is that contested history?
It is contested history. And look, on most historical events or individuals, there's two sides to the story. I'm personally an admirer of Churchill, but there is a critique against him. And what you do is you get school students to immerse themselves in both sides of the argument, looking at the source historical documents, and then critically forming their own view. And I tell you what, I've seen this most particularly in the debates we organise about Israel-Palestine, where the kids do it, they debate from one side, they then debate from the other side. That's part of the process. And you see this light bulb moment where they go, it's a bit more complicated than I thought it was. And I think that's actually a healthy thing for young people.
And you trust, no disrespect, and you trust left-wing teachers not to push one side. I'd be amazed.
Absolutely. Look. We are deliberately non-biased. We test out the resources on both sides of the argument by advocates from each camp. So we're getting it right, and we're laying out both sides of the perspective.
So they go into schools today, these experts or academics?
So we produce e-books, we do CPD for teachers, and we organise school debates. And there's not been one complaint against the work of the charity in 8 years, because what it gives the ability of teachers to do is to discuss and teach these subjects and organise debates where they're not open to criticism. And when you bear in mind that, there are still some teachers in hiding because they've taught controversial historical topics, I think you need this kind of process to enable young people to engage with the issue.
Charlotte, you've got Sprogs, haven't you? Would you want your kiddos learning about contested history? I mean, does it not risk muddying the waters, do you think?
No, first of all, I can't believe Churchill's a contested history, to be honest. I was quite surprised to see him on your list. But second of all, I thought it was a given that education is about two sides of the argument and debating, and it's tragic what's happened to universities. You've got to do this for universities, Bill, because, as we all know, you're not allowed to have two opinions at university anymore, only one opinion, and you'll be chucked out of the union if you dare debate the other side. But really, children should be learning at school critical thinking. That is what education is, isn't it?
And I agree with you about higher education. I often say the work we do is the antidote to cancel culture. And too often in higher education, and particularly amongst young people, there is a view, I can't be confronted with things I disagree with. Education is about looking at things you don't agree with as well as those things you do.
Absolutely agree.
And what I love is when I'm able to use something that I've learned at school or at university in the conversations that I have in my everyday life, not something I've just written in an exam and then forgotten about. So, and it's the contested histories that you get into debates with people more in everyday life. And it would be great if people were armed with the knowledge to have a meaningful discussion rather than, I read on Twitter somewhere that Winston Churchill was an evil racist, so I'll just go with that, right? They need to read into it properly.
I personally do not trust some teachers not to twist the narrative on things like Churchill.
Yeah,
with this.
Indeed. Bill, where can people find out more from your charity?
Go on our website.
What's it called?
Parallel Histories.
Parallel Histories. Great stuff. OK, more after the break. Stick with us. Back in just a tick.